Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast alongside Lyle Leong. And Lyle, the Back to 12 podcast, we might need to put an asterisk next to it now because there's 13 teams. Coach Prime,
Mm.
Colorado back, by the way, what the Big 12 did, releasing that press release where they just said they're back. Arguably one of the most baller things I've ever seen. But on the podcast today, we're going to talk about Colorado rejoining the Big 12, what it means for the conference, give you the latest updates from 24/7 Sports, The Athletic, more. Also, who's next? Who could be next? I talked about it yesterday in a video, who I think could be next. We'll hear Lyle's opinion on that. What's the best number for the Big 12 to land on? And then we're going to give our final predictions in terms of when it's all said and done, whatever we think it looks like, whether that's 14, 16, 18, 20 teams, whatever it is, we're going to give our final predictions on that front. But if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and like the video if you want more Big 12 videos here on the channel. My guy, Lyle, how you doing, man?
Oh man, blessed to be in your presence, man. So, anytime I get to hop on a podcast, talk with my brother, especially about what's going on with all the new stuff that's going on, man, it's a good day. So it's exciting for me to see what's going on, but it's also exciting as a guy that got to play Colorado a long time ago. I thought it was a really cool rivalry. If anyone's never been to Colorado, it's a really cool stadium, probably one of my favorite stadiums. I've gotten to play in it. Does smell different, but it's a great place overall to go play and be a part of. So man, I'm glad to have him back, brother.
Yeah, no, that was my first thought when I saw, hey, Colorado's back in the Big 12. I'm hoping Tech plays them
Yeah,
on the road next year because I will be making a trip to Boulder.
I
Because
promise I'll
if the
be going
chain
to.
smokers have taught me anything, Lyle, because obviously I get all of my information in terms of facts and everything from popular music. You
Mhm.
never get older when you're in
Mm,
Boulder. Shout out to
mm.
the chain smokers.
Uh,
But before we get into that and everything and talking about Coach Prime and stuff like that, head down to the pinned comment below and give us your one word to describe conference realignment, expansion in college football. Do you like it? Do you not like it? I'm not going to lie, Lyle. At first, I didn't like it because I thought the Big 12 was going to die, right? Now, I'm a huge Big 12 guy. I know you are too. But now the Big 12 is in the power chair, it feels like. And it's almost like, all right, things change up a little bit when you get a little bit of power. You don't want to be power hungry. You got to be smart
mm.
with it. But the Big 12 is in a really good spot. But want people to tell us your one word to describe conference realignment and expansion in college football. All right, Lyle. Pete Thamel yesterday broke the news. Actually, I think it was 2 days ago now on Wednesday. Um, Colorado's going to join the Big 12. It's now official. They had a Board of Regents meeting. They unanimously voted 9-0 to rejoin the Big 12. I mentioned in the open, the Big 12 put out that press release, which is, again, one of the most baller things I've ever seen. And if you know why it's baller. Just simply saying they're back. And it's big. But Lyle, like you talked about it just a second ago, you got to play Colorado. Um, but what is your opinion of them coming back from the standpoint of renewing that rivalry you talked about? Now, obviously, it's not the biggest rivalry in the Big 12 or anything like that, but I do think it was one of the more underrated ones from a Texas Tech standpoint. We'll get to that in a broader view in terms of the Big 12, but strictly from a Texas Tech point of view, Lyle, Colorado being back, what does that mean to you specifically?
Oh man, I think it's more so for the experience to get to go and play there, man. It's an awesome experience. And I think, you know, honestly, what makes it so great moving forward is Prime. I'm not gonna lie. I know people want to hate on that and say, "Oh, this, that, and the other," but the reason that Colorado is relevant right now is because they got Coach Prime. So they won not that many games the last couple of years. This man hadn't even won game, right? This man hadn't
Last year,
even hadn't even coached, and season tickets are sold out. And it just brings attention. Once we play Colorado, Colorado's gonna get a lot of attention because Coach Prime. But when Texas Tech plays Colorado, it also brings more of that attention to the school. So I think Colorado does that with this new with having Prime as their coach. Before If they didn't have Coach Prime as their coach, I'd be like, you know, because it was a cool
I don't know
rivalry,
what the appeal
but
is. Like, honestly, like obviously you want the numbers, but I think like I saw somebody tweet this out, and I wish I could remember what it was, who it was, to give credit. But somebody was like, "It's crazy how Colorado was more valuable to the Big 12 than Utah, who won the conference last year."
mm-hmm,
It's all about eyeballs at this point and what TV, companies want to see, and they
exactly,
know what people want to see, and that's Coach Prime. They want to either
exactly.
see him do great or they want to see him fail. And it feels like a lot of people are on the fail side. I want to see him succeed. I think it'd be awesome, right? But either way, people are going to watch Coach Prime. So that's a huge factor. You're absolutely right on that.
And I think
Go ahead.
on the last thing, RC, not to cut you off, I think the biggest thing of all for them, what the plus for them is, and I know we were talking about Texas Tech, but understanding, you know, the Pac-12 is dissolving, number one. And number two, they don't get great TV deals, and it's not because they're not great teams. The problem is they're on the West Coast and they play at
No one
11
gives a
o'clock.
damn. Yep.
Watching Lincoln play. That's my guy. I'm gonna watch him play. I got to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning to watch them play. So I think
Mm-hmm.
their area of where they are at, it causes people not to be able and stay up and watch that unless you're a true diehard fan. And so, like I said, for me, I'm watching Link because of um, our relationship and watching it. But there's a couple games I didn't make it through, and so I think that's the biggest problem in the Pac-12 that they had. And I think once USC got up out of there, I think that kind of ended it. So we'll talk about more who's expanding, who's coming in, but I think, like I said, those times and then USC getting out of there is kind of what put an end to that. Because I mean, honestly, if USC is gone, Oregon might be the only team I want to see play. Um, you know
Him
what I'm
in
saying?
Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, and Washington, Washington's not, to me, they're a really good team, but they're a team that's very like fundamental. No one, I've never heard anybody say, "Man, I can't wait to watch Washington because they're fun." Like
You
I've
telling
never
me you
heard.
don't want to watch Jake Browning?
I mean, I do,
Come
but
on.
I'm
Shout
just
out to
saying.
Jake Browning back in the college football playoff where they got freaking boat raced in Atlanta.
But I'll just say, how many people have you ever heard say? I've never heard, and I know we live down here in West Texas and in Texas, but I've never in my life heard anybody say, "Man, I can't wait to go watch Washington play," ever. So I just think it's like what's popular
Yeah.
to people. I've heard many people UCLA and USC or people love those type schools because they have fun offenses and all that other good stuff. And so I just think, like I said, once they left, it escalated to the Big 12 capitalized, and I think the Big 12 capitalized on this one. I was like you at first, no disrespect to our BYU's and Houston's, but I wasn't a big fan. UCF. We talked about this before, but like I said, at the end of the day, like I tell people, they will recruit up. So I think the first year they might struggle a year or two, but then they'll get those recruits that they couldn't get when they weren't in the Big 12. And having Colorado come with all that stuff, some kids that want to go to Colorado that can't go to Colorado, that helps us capitalize. Like, hey, I'll go to Texas Tech just so we can beat them. So I think it helps in so many aspects of recruiting, of pumping up the conference and all that good stuff, man. I really do.
Yeah, I think, again, if I would have told you 2 years ago, funny enough, Lyle, this Colorado news came out 2 years to the day, literally the day that Texas and Oklahoma left, announced they were leaving. So 2 years. And if I would have told you that, first and foremost, the Big 12 would even be remotely close to a position of power
Mm.
in terms of the realignment aspect of it, I would have called you crazy, probably blocked you on social media, and called you bad names. Just kidding. I don't do that to people. But I do think I would have thought you were crazy, right? And now you're looking at a conference, albeit, let's be realistic about this, right? They are not the SEC and they are not the Big Ten. Be realistic about it, right? But in the grand scheme of things, you are the third best conference in America now. And there's something to be said for that. And you were talking about Colorado and their recruiting. I think an underrated aspect of this in terms of the Big 12 wanting to go west and trying to get some of those brands, whether it's, the Colorado, Arizona, Oregon, we'll talk about all of them in a little bit. The biggest thing is now each school in the Big 12 can recruit nationally because you can go in to a school in Florida if you're Coach Prime no, let's not even do Coach Prime. Let's just say BYU and be like, hey, you're going to play in Florida. You're going to get to be in front of your family at UCF, right? You're going to get to play on the East Coast. Like, you're going to have that opportunity. And so I think there's something to be said for that in terms of really nationalizing the Big 12. And you're 100% right. I wanted to go back to the aspect of staying up late, right, on the Pac-12 side of it. I think it drastically changes the viewpoint of how people look at it. And it's funny, you wouldn't even stay up to watch Caleb Williams. Why else would I stay up, right? We're talking about a Heisman winner. But I do think if the Big 12 decides to go, hey, hypothetically, they get the 4 corner schools, right? Let's just say Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, right? That's a reason to stay up now. Now you have 5 schools in the Mountain Time Zone, including BYU and those 4 schools. And you're not technically in the Pacific Time Zone, right? But you're close enough to it where, hey, you can stay up, and that hour does make a little bit of an impact, right? I just think it's crazy in the sense of how far the Big 12 has come. And Brett Yarmark, the commissioner, deserves so much credit in terms of the way of thinking behind things. I'm glad the Big 12 didn't go I don't know any other way to say this nicely, but the old white guy that has a bow tie on commissioner route. Like, that shit is outdated. There's no reason for it in college football anymore. And the Big 12 is proving that. Now, I'm not saying the Big 12 has done the best job possible at expansion, but in terms of the cards they were dealt, I think there's an argument for it because the SEC was always in a power position. The Big 10 was always in a power position. The Big 12 was left for dead, right? Like, the Big 12 was left for dead. If I would have told you 2 years ago that at this time the Big 12 would be dead, you'd be like, yeah, I see that. Everybody had to leave. They had to disband. But instead, they jumped the line. They took over the TV deal from the Pac-12, who was next in line, got all of the power they could, and now they take a school that was in a conference that is dead set on finding a new TV deal, and now they're at 9. No TV deal is going to come to the Pac-12. It's done. This is done. It's just, when is it going to happen, right? Like, it's a formality at this point. And I think that that's really the biggest thing for me in getting Coach Prime in Colorado is now you accelerated that process. You accelerated the process to where the Big 12 is no longer a waiting game, right? Like, you lose Texas and Oklahoma next year, but you're still at 13 schools. You're going to get to 14. It's just a matter of who at this point for next season, right? But you accelerated the process, and really now you put the pressure on schools like Oregon. You put the pressure on schools like Washington, but pressure on schools like Utah, Arizona, whoever it may be, in the sense that the Big Ten's not coming to call right now. You're going to have to make a decision. It's either you're going to be left behind in this conference that, you said it best, Lyle, is dying. It's dissolving. I mean, it is taking on water so fast. The Titanic is staying afloat faster than the Pac-12 at this point. And it's one of those deals where these schools are going to have to make decisions quickly. And I would not be shocked if you get a school like Oregon and Washington to join the Big 12 in the sense of, well, if the Big 10 isn't offering us anything, we got to go somewhere and make some money. And then boom, the Big 12 is again solidified itself as that third best conference in America. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't see the ACC lasting too much longer either. I think this is going to be a 3-conference juggernaut, and the Big 12 is going to be one of them, and they'll be in a good spot for it. But like the video, if you're happy that Coach Prime, Colorado, back in the Big 12, it's a lot of fun. Who would have thought a Big 12 matchup in week number 1, at least a preview of it, when Coach Prime heads down to, well, my neck of the woods, Lyle, Fort Worth, to face off against the TCU Horned Frogs in week number 1 on Fox. So that'll be fun. Let's jump into the latest realignment talk, though, Lyle. We're about 15 minutes in here, and appreciate y'all tuning in. Again, hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell while you're at it, too, to stay in the know on the Big 12 all year long. All right, 24/7. Got to give credit to everybody that's kept us up to date on this. A lot of good reporting right now going on. 24/7. Brandon Marcello, he says Yarmark's primary target is Arizona, sources tell 24/7 Sports. He went on to say the university is open to discussing its future And the Big 12 has communicated with the Wildcat leadership for several months. Members of Arizona's Board of Regents have expressed the desire to keep Arizona State and Arizona in the same conference. I'm going to come out and say this. Arizona is 100% the next domino. It's 100%. And it makes a lot of sense from the standpoint of, first and foremost, they're in the Pac-12. It'll accelerate that process. But also, Brett Yarmark has talked about how basketball is a big priority, right? Arizona, albeit they choked last year in March Madness. It's fine. It's whatever. Didn't cost me any money or anything, Lyle. They 100% did. But they have a really good basketball history. So that would help them come to the Big 12. It would make it 14. And at that point, Lyle, I think the most interesting school to watch, and people can see it on the bottom line already, it's Oregon. Like, I want to see what Oregon does, because I think they're going to be forced where their backs are up against the wall, because the Big Ten is not coming to call right now. They're trying to use the Big 12 as leverage. Let's be real about it. That's what they're trying to do, because they want to be in the Big Ten. But, and it makes sense. I'd probably want to be in the Big Ten too, because I get to make 16, 17 million more dollars as an athletic program a year. It makes sense, right? But Big Ten's not coming to call. And so I want to see if Oregon decides, okay, well, I'm just going to go join the Big 12. And then what kind of domino does this create? But the first domino, don't get it twisted, is 100% Arizona now. It is Arizona and then everybody else. And then I actually think the second domino, Lyle, is a funny one, is if Arizona doesn't get their act together and accept the bid here, I think they may go UConn.
That's an interesting take, brother. That's an interesting take. I think the biggest issue that they're going to have, in my opinion, is just teams are going to want to stay together, and how many do they want to do? Arizona is going to want Arizona State. They're gonna do that. Oregon's going to want Oregon State. That's a big rivalry. That's money. I think those are the biggest issues. You get Utah. You know what I'm saying? Utah State might. I think that's the biggest issue that they're having.
Well, Utah would be BYU. It'd be the Holy War, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like those, I think once you get those schools that have schools in the same state, usually they want to stay together. And, Texas, of course, thinks they're better than everyone else, so they left. But 90% of the time, like OU, and they're both, most time, Oklahoma State, like that's a huge rivalry. That's what I'm saying? I think those are the things on the other side that they have to kind of talk about. Because I know growing up watching like A&M in Texas, that was and now they're doing it. They're going back to SEC, but I think that was an issue when they left, is just the rivalry, that was Thanksgiving, it was Big 12, it was, so I just think those are the issues that they're going to have. Like, you said Arizona, but I think honestly, if they get Arizona, they're going to have to get Arizona State. I think that's just my humble opinion. I think that
Yeah,
they're
I
going
think
to
it's
be.
a part of it.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, and I just wonder what Oregon has. And then if we get, Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon State, are we going to take a Washington? You know what I'm saying? And Washington State, what is their whole? So I think it kind of just depends on how those schools are. They trying to stay together as a whole? Are they trying to separate and do all that? But I think it'll rub a lot of people the wrong way for them to be in the conference so long, and the rivalry that they built and all that good stuff when you go, because I think it takes away from a college when they do that. If Arizona came to the Big 12 and Arizona State didn't, it takes away from Arizona State. You know what I'm saying? Most kids that might have want to go to Arizona State would rather be in the Big 12, because it's ultimately going to these power conferences, these big power conferences.
I think the main issue I have is I don't think those schools have that luxury anymore, where they can tell conferences, hey, for example, Arizona, right? I don't think there's that luxury anymore where they have the power over a conference to say, hey, if you take us, you have to take Arizona State. I don't think they have that power anymore, because the Pac-12 is dying. It's done. Like this past week, I don't think it was maybe necessarily the final nail all the way in the coffin, but I'm telling you, they've got it placed there and the hammer's ready.
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of like cementing the Pac-12 being dead, right? So I don't think Arizona has that power to do anything like that, specifically with Arizona State. And I know this is probably going to rub people the wrong way, but and I don't like it either. But isn't that part of college football dead now? Like with all this realignment stuff, isn't it dead? Like the college football you and I grew up on, it no longer exists, right? Like those classic rivalries really are few and far between anymore because of conference realignment. And I'm not saying they don't exist, but it almost feels like if I'm in Arizona's shoes, it is not worth forcing the issue to bring along a school that this conference that obviously wants me in Arizona doesn't want, in i.e. Arizona State. And so like it's almost and it's selfish to think this way if I'm the school, but this is kind of how I think in this way because I got to save my own ass at this point. Like I can't worry about what's going on with you. I got to worry about, hey, is my athletic department going to be able to stay afloat? Am I going to be able to play in, a high level conference in order to pay these salaries of these people that work for me, right? Like, I don't want layoffs kind of deal. Nobody does, right? But I think that it's almost at that point now. And that's not to say that I couldn't see the situation that you're talking about, Lyle, like where it's like Arizona, the reason they're not joining the Big 12 right now is because, hey, we want Arizona State. And then the Big 12 has to figure out, okay, well, now we're still at the odd number situation. Who's going to be the next school, right? I agree with you in the sense of it could be a roadblock, but I don't think it should be.
Right.
At this point.
No, I agree. But like I said, I don't think they come and say they're not joining because I just think they kind of create that roadblock. And, you got to look at it from both ways, too. As far as Big 12 carrying Arizona football, it does that. But as far as basketball, it adds tremendous value. So
For sure.
I think that's the part where they got the leverage. At the end of the day, that they can probably get into another conference because of basketball. And it brings more, revenue to whatever basketball place that they go to. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces to that, that come into play. I don't know how they are in baseball, but like I said, if Arizona came to the Big 12, that ups the Big 12. Like they're already the best conference, but that super ups them to, close to being not even close anymore to any of these other ones. So I think that's the part where they got leverage in that aspect because I think they can go to any conference. I think that the SEC would take them for basketball purposes only. I think,
but it doesn't make money though, right?
What,
like in the
basketball?
grand scheme of thing, like we both know that football makes 75-80% of the revenue. Like
Right.
I don't think because like I agree with you. Like Arizona's appealing. There's a reason I want them in the Big 12, and it's because of basketball, right? But when it's all said and done, if we're looking at it from like a pie perspective, right? 80% of your money that you make is from football, even if you're crap, right? Like, and so I just wonder how far that card of saying, like, hey, we're Arizona, we have an historically great basketball program. And I'm not trying to sell them short. I'm just saying, like, I wonder how much weight that carries in these things. Because again, if they're going to go to a conference, Lyle, like, I'll disagree with you on this front. I don't think that SEC or Big Ten truthfully gives a damn about Arizona. I think the only reason the Big 12 cares is because of what you just brought up, basketball, and the Big 12 is a basketball conference. So that makes sense to me. But I think when it's all said and done, I wonder how much that card actually weighs in the dialogue, right? Like, because, for example, if you're Arizona and I'm the Big 12, I'm going to give you that. Like, hey, you got a great basketball program. What else are you bringing to the
Right.
table? Another Mountain West time zone school? Awesome. That's a quarter of a gold star in your favor, right? Like, but I think when it's all said and done, like the real thing that Arizona brings more than anything is a state and them getting closer to California. And that's a big, big deal for the Big 12 from what we talked about earlier in the recruiting standpoint. And obviously basketball does too. I don't want to sell that short, but in the end, when it's all said and done, football's king, and we both know that.
But I do want to say I do disagree on one minor deal, and that's just because playing at the University of Kansas, like Kansas brings a lot of money in, and I think
For
they're in that.
sure.
I think they're in that same boat. They make the Elite Eight, the Sweet 16 all the time. So honestly, like I said, you can go to when we play Kansas football game. There's nobody in the stands. You look right across, you see a huge, nice basketball stadium, and their football stadium's crap, and they haven't done anything to it.
Yeah.
So I think in that aspect, that's the part where it changes. Like they do make money off basketball because everyone sees. I've seen Arizona play so many times last year on TV. So like TV, you might get a TV deal off of Arizona alone. So I just think, like I said, I know football is king, but at some schools, very few. Same with UConn. I think that's the same thing. If UConn got in
Sure.
there, it ain't because people go to their football games. And so I think like they're saying that's where they have that leverage. I'm a basketball school and you know what I bring, and we make our money off basketball. And so, like I said, I've never seen anybody wear an Arizona football shirt ever. You know what I'm saying? I haven't hardly ever seen anybody wear a Kansas football shirt or a Yukon football shirt. So I think that they do make money
Yeah.
off all that. You know what I'm saying? Like I
I,
just
I
I
get it.
they didn't play. No one can. We played Kansas, brother. I promise you, it wasn't over 300 people. I promise. You
No,
know what
I,
I'm
I, I
saying?
get the standpoint. I 100% get the standpoint of like, do they make more money from basketball than other schools? Unequivocally, yes. But even still, just from like the TV deal standpoint, Arizona football makes more than basketball. I know that's crazy to say, but it's the truth. Just because, again, football is king, and so um, I'm all for Arizona. I'm not trying
Me
to
too.
crap on
Me
them
too.
joining
Me
the
too.
Big 12 or anything. I think we're just bringing up different points from it
Right.
in terms of what they bring to the table. Before we get into more of what is being talked about this
Mm.
time from the Athletic, I got another question for everybody down in the comments below. Predict the future. How many schools, or, well, we'll save that one for later. Who will be the next school to join the Big 12? I think you understand where we're going with this. I think we, both Lyle and I agree it's Arizona. But let's hear from you guys. Is it Arizona? Let us know down in the comments below. All right, real quick, let's talk about what the Athletic had to say from Matt Olson, another really good source that's on top of it when it comes to Big 12 realignment and expansion. Olson says, but here's the thing about your mark. What he wants to sell his members on is UConn. If Colorado is the only Pac 12 member coming in, don't be surprised if your mark use all of the chips that he has gained throughout the past year and goes all in on trying to sell the Big 12 members on adding UConn. Thoughts, Lyle?
Don't like it, brother. Don't like it.
Why is that?
Um, I just think it hurts. It hurts what kind of what you go back. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself here, but it goes back. It hurts what the Big 12 is known is. Well, I don't want to say known for because they're actually probably the not probably the best conference in basketball and not for football. But I just think it's counterproductive in a sense as far as it adds on to a basketball conference that's already the best, and it takes away from a football conference that you're trying to make better. And so I think those are the parts you got to look in there. For one, kids don't want to play. I don't even like playing at Iowa State, and you're adding BYU and you're adding UConn. Like those are places I'd rather not play. I think that's a value of the Pac-12. Even Colorado, like it was cold, but I think that's the part of the Pac-12 that used to get a lot of attention. Hey, I can go play at 70 degrees in November, December, those type things. So I think it's kind of counterproductive for those. It's not fun for kids to go play in. It's a long trip and it doesn't bring value to the football part. And so I just think it takes away. And in the future, I think instead of better in the Big 12, what's going to happen is you're going to have somebody undefeated and they're going to be like, you beat UConn, BYU, and Houston. And it's going to take away, and somebody like Alabama is going to have one loss and skip over us because they had to play Texas. And
But
you know,
doesn't the college football playoff expanding help that in a regard?
I kind of
Because it goes to 12 in 2 years. So
I know it goes to 12, but I don't know, man. I just think that I just think it hurts it overall, the value of it, and
yeah,
it doesn't football wise, it doesn't make schools want to come. Like Arizona is in a situation where they're in a bad situation. But I don't think the Big 12 will ever get better people if they continue to get these type schools, and it's no knock on the school. But I'm saying, why did Texas leave? If we were, I feel like if the Big 12, and they may never have talked about this, but in my opinion, if the Big 12 would have said, hey, Texas, we're bringing in Oregon and Washington, they might have stayed. But I think when you hear talks, you hear about Houston, UCF. Those are great programs. They've done great things, but at the same time, like, if I asked 100 recruits, I don't feel like any of the schools we brought in is schools that they would want to go to. And I think football wise, and I think UConn is another school, that they don't want to go to. They don't want to play, and I just don't think it brings value. I know you can't do that. I think the best thing is if you can bring value in both sports. Like, I think Arizona's okay in that aspect, as they bring in all their sports. It helps. It's not a fall off on that other sport. Just like with basketball, UCF, does that help us? No. Does Houston help us? Absolutely. Who else did we bring? BYU, does that help us in basketball? No. And so I just think, it's hard to do, but if you can find something that brings value, one could be more than the other, but brings value to the program, that's how you surpass a SEC. Because I tell people all the time, honestly, it's only the top 6 teams in the SEC that's really all that, honestly. Like Vanderbilt, never seen them play. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't come on TV. The rest of those
Sure.
schools down there, to me, similar to the Big 12. You got your top dogs, and then you got your, in my opinion. Now, the top ones, Alabama, USC, I mean, not USC, but Alabama, Georgia, LSU. That's, what I'm saying? I've always felt
Sure.
like that, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think just finding value in those sports.
I think it goes back to the whole argument of, does the Big 12 want to be a basketball conference?
Right.
Right. And
Right.
if you add UConn, I don't know how other people feel about it, but in my opinion, they're a blue blood. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, they're the reigning national champions. I'm not even saying that just because they won it last year. I'm saying you look at their success and what they've done really in the past quarter century. They're one of the best basketball programs in the country, right? And so my mindset is kind of like, okay, if we're playing the hypothetical game here,
Mm.
UConn does bring value in another sense. Football's on the up and up. Jim Moore has done a good job there. He took a winless team and brought them to a bowl game last year. And again, I'm not saying, oh my God, they're going to compete for the college football playoff, but there's something there to have a team make a bowl game, right? Like, you get more eyeballs in front, theoretically. Theoretically, you have the chance. Does it happen? Not most of the time. There's too many bowls to begin with, but
Mm.
theoretically, right?
Right.
But I think the biggest thing from the non-sporting aspect of what UConn would bring to the table, you're in the Northeast now. And that's a big time deal, right? Sure, you're not in New York City, you're not in Boston. But now UConn, one of the bigger schools in the Northeast, one of the more highly regarded schools in the Big East in the Northeast when it comes to athletics, you now have a piece of that pie where a lot of the population in the country is located, right? And so I get it from the standpoint of, hey, the football, it is what it is. Basketball to me is a bigger sell at UConn than it is at Arizona. But you're right in the sense, Lyle, where the whole package of Arizona is more appealing than UConn, in
Mm.
my opinion. But I do think at the same time, for example, it goes back to the conversation we had a little bit early on in the podcast where we talked about, if Arizona and Arizona State are linked together, you're back at 15. Do you just go get UConn?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So could you get both? There's a theoretical argument there, I think, and this is a perfect transition. But before we get there,
Hold on, I got one more
answer this.
thing.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, last thing too. And then I think for football recruiting area, I think like, yes, but there's kids that play football up there that are very talented kids, but for the
Sure.
most part, when you
It's
go
down
up
south,
north,
100%.
it's
Yeah.
basketball. So you're like I said, it doesn't benefit you on that side very much at all. There's not, like, I guarantee you, Texas Tech is not going up there to get more than 1 or 2 kids. They get,
Yeah.
and like I said, that's the part we talk about UCF that brings value, because you go Florida, you can always go get outstanding fast kids from there. Texas, but
Yeah.
when you start going up north like BYU, how many of these schools are going to go up there and recruit a BYU kid? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, well,
Or
BYU's in its
Utah,
own kind of
Utah,
deal.
sorry.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, BYU's kind of its own deal in the sense of like, there's the Mormon aspects of it, right? Like, I mean, it's a little bit different from the church side of things and how that's played with that university. But on the UConn side, yeah, I think you can get more kids in terms of basketball. Football's not going to happen probably, right? But
Right.
I do think when it's all said and done, I do think that if you ask me, hey, who are the two most likely schools to join the Big 12? I'm saying Arizona in the number 1 spot, and then UConn's in the 2nd spot in terms to take that 14. Because again, Commissioner Yormark has made it very abundantly clear. Basketball is a major priority. This is a basketball conference. And if you have a chance to go get 2 teams who maybe aren't the traditional blue bloods like, the North Carolina, Duke, UCLA, Kansas of the world, but they're not too far off, you take that opportunity and you run with it. And then you figure out that 16th team later on if you do get both of them. But hey, I mean, that's just kind of what it is. Let's transition a little bit more into like what we think the ideal fit is, Lyle. But before we do, I want people to answer this. How many schools from the Pac-12? We were just talking about UConn. I understand they're on the East Coast. Let me know on the Pac-12 side, how many schools from the Pac-12 actually end up in the Big 12? Let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, I mean, let's transition into the ideal school number for the Big 12, Lyle, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I truly do think it's probably just preference. And I'll start out by saying this, kind of give my argument for the number that I'll say here at the end. I think right now it depends on if you want long-term flexibility or you want to strike while the iron's hot. Okay. And what I mean by that is you've put a lot of these Pac-12 schools on their heels. You're the aggressor right now in the sense of you can go to Oregon and be like, hey, you're the one carrying all the weight in this conference. You think anybody gives a damn about watching Washington State? No. You're the one bringing in all these money. You're the one that's feeding everybody else when you should be trying to get more money yourself, right? And so do you want to go in with that argument? I could see it. But I think for me, there's 2 options here. One, you either go and get the highest possible number you can, which I think is 20. That's the number I feel comfortable with. Or you go to the sweet spot, which I think is 16. And 16 is kind of that sweet spot for me. And I kind of named the schools that I think in a best case scenario would join, right? Best case scenario for the Big 12, I think you go get Arizona. You're at 14 at that point. You go get UConn and you get Oregon. Is that likely? No. I want to preface that. It's not likely at all. I think that's best case scenario. But I do think when it's all said and done, the schools you probably end up with to get to 16, which again, I think 16 is the perfect spot right now because I'm calling it right now on July 28th, 2023. The ACC is about to have some major ass problems. They already kind of do. Florida State wants out. I think Miami's going to want out. Do they go to the SEC? Do the SEC says, hey, we don't got any spots? What about the Big 10, right? Could the Big 12 solidify themselves and get to that 14 or 16 number and be waiting in the wings where it's like, hey, we're cool with what we have right now, but as soon as shit hits the fan out east, we're going to go grab schools like Miami. We're going to go grab Florida State. We're going to go try and grab North Carolina, Pittsburgh, whoever it may be, right? But I think if you told me, hey, they go to the 16, which I think is, again, the sweet spot, sweet 16. I almost said that right there, Lyle. Colorado, obviously they're done. So you're at 13. Arizona, 14. I do think Arizona State tags along, and then Oregon. I think that's the sweet spot, right? Do I think that's the most likely scenario? No, I think the most likely scenario is they add Arizona and then they wait just to get to 14, see what happens elsewhere, kind of stay back in the shadows a little bit, but know that they have the power and the authority to go out and add a team like Oregon if they come calling. at a team like Washington if they come calling. Because I'm telling you right now, Lyle, if Oregon and Washington show that they want to be in the Big 12, accept them immediately. Do it. Those are two national brands. Do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. No pun intended on the Nike stuff there. But I think that that's kind of where we're at. It just comes back to me again. Your initial point early on, is Oregon a package deal with Oregon State? Is Washington a package deal with Washington State? Because if they're not, when they shouldn't be, by the way, rivalries are done anyway. Like I feel like I'm the Scrooge right now talking like this, Lyle, but it's the truth in my opinion. Like leave them. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're the one carrying the weight for those guys. Like, and again, I'm not trying to talk too bad about Oregon State and Washington State, but truthfully, what do they bring to the table? Right. And again, that's no shot at all. I'm just trying to think of this from a realistic standpoint. Like football for both. Okay. Kind of, not really. Basketball, kind of, not really. Baseball, Oregon State for sure. But I think again, and I want to hear what your ideal number is. I think for the time being, the ideal number for me, Lyle, is 14. Go get Arizona. Be okay with that through 2024. And then if you can add another team or two, whether that's, Washington, Oregon, UConn, whoever it may be, you add them later on once you actually see a little bit more of the landscape and how things probably continue to sink out west.
Yeah, no, I agree. Honestly, in my opinion, I think SEC is the best conference. So they model it. What they do, they're kind of the front runners. What they do, the Big 12 is kind of trying to emulate. And so I think that they'll try to follow that suit. They have 16, we'll do 16 to kind of create those. And I think the Big 10 will follow too. And like you said earlier, they'll have those 3 power conferences. I think really if you go past 16, I think you start to put your conference. Like I think the SEC is going to run into this problem personally, but I think once you get to number 20, you got teams that don't play each other. It takes away getting to play those preseason games or those non-conference games. That's a big deal to people. Like Oregon versus Texas sold out. Everybody's super excited to see that. When you get into those 20 conferences, you take away those opportunities for your school to play schools that you normally don't play. And I know playing in the Big 12, I loved it. There's no better conference in my opinion, but we went to Baylor every 2 years. Baylor came to us. We played A&M. We played, it was fun to get to, and when Coach Leach was there, we played teams like, South Dakota State, stuff like that. We didn't get to play like Oregon. We didn't get to play like a Houston, you know what I'm saying? Or we did play Houston, but you know what I'm saying? A bigger school like Oregon. I would have loved to get to play Oregon game 1 and things like that. So I think once you get into the 20s, you start watering it down. You have a team that may be really good, but they didn't have to play LSU or Georgia this year. So they don't get the same love, and expanding it will help, but they may not get into the playoffs because of how their schedule is set up because you have too many teams and you got to move it around. So I think being able to have, those top teams play, does it knock you out sometime? Yes. But every year, like Alabama, they're going to, if they lose one game, they're still in the top 3. If they lose 2 games, hell, they're still in the top 5. So I think having those schools, being able to play those top schools is good. But like I said, I think if you play the bottom half of that, if Alabama plays the bottom half of the SEC and they add 20 teams, they play the bottom half. I just think it hurts your conference after a while. You don't get to see those rivalries and things like that. So, I know they'll probably always make this happen, but the SEC gets 20 teams and we don't see OU play Texas. It's going to be a lot of angry people. And I think those are the things that you kind of run into when you start getting all those teams because you got to mix and match. And I know you said rivalries. I agree with you are gone, but that's a big one. That's I think
some aren't. Some aren't.
Yeah.
OU and Texas isn't. That's for sure.
Right. So I just think when you do that, and I'd be scared of the Big 12 if we got to 20. I think it maybe might be too much. I bet you they'll do a East and a West or however they want to do it,
They'd
North
have
and
to,
South.
yeah.
But like I said, at the same time, there's years back in the day when they did that. That Kansas, would make the South championship or not South North championship, and get blasted because they didn't have to play those same teams. So I think that's the only thing that scares me about getting to the 20 numbers. And I would personally like 14, Honestly, to be honest with y'all, I like 12. I know we're already over that. I love the Big 12. I know
It's
you
just
got the
not it's just not sensible though. Like from a
yeah,
financial standpoint in today's college football
right,
landscape,
right,
you just can't do it.
and I agree with that. I love like the tradition of the Big 12. Me being a former Big
Sure.
12 guy, it's just I love seeing the symbol. But I think for me, ideal I'd like to have 14, but I don't. I think they'll get to 16 because I think the SEC has 16. I think we'll get Arizona State, and honestly, I think we'll get Oregon. And if we didn't get Oregon, and the Big Ten didn't accept, is UCLA going to the Big Ten already?
Yeah, all of
They're
them
already
are.
going.
Yeah,
Okay.
UCLA and USC are all going to the Big Ten. So
So yeah, so I would say the next ones, in my opinion, would be Oregon. Like you, so I'd say Arizona State, Oregon, and I think they're talking about UConn, but I think that if it wasn't Oregon, my last pick would be Washington, and that's just because um, I
it's a
think
big market in Seattle.
right, and I think like this first game is kind of they're seeing the hype, and then next year Texas Tech goes to Oregon, and I think they're going to see a fun game. You got two teams that kind of have fun offenses that people like to see,
Sure.
and I think that's the part that and Oregon's good at basketball too. And so I think that that's the thing that's going to be appealing to those guys is just um, the biggest thing for Oregon is they're coming down south. Now they could come get Texas kids. I think it helps those up north schools way more than it helps us down here. But Oregon could come get they already get kids from all over the place. But I think them come to play in Texas, their recruiting class goes through the roof. Besides Texas Tech, they got the best uniforms. They got nice facilities. I just think those kids are like, man, well, I'll never see my family. I play at 1 o'clock in the morning. And now that all changes if they come to the Big 12. Kids get their parents can watch them play. They play at a
Sure.
decent hour. I think it helps. So,
I think for me, like kind of back to it, I think that again, the sweet spot for me is 16.
me
But
too.
I could see a scenario where you almost have to get as many chips at the table as you possibly can.
Hmm.
And you just got to hoard as many schools as you possibly can and hold on to them for as long as you can in today's environment. And it wouldn't shock me if the Big 12 went to 20, for example, and
Mm,
then they split up into 4 divisions.
mm,
And you had 5 teams in each division. You played those teams every year. And then you played this division this year, this division next year, so on and so forth, kind of deal. Um, I could see that happening because again, if you have 5 and 5, right? Let's just say there's a north, east, south, and west, right? For example, Texas Tech is in the south or the Texas one or whatever with um, Houston, Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, right? That'll be the south one, right? They play in this scenario the east. The East would be Iowa State, Cincinnati, UCF, and I don't know what the Kansas State. I don't know, right? But you would think about it from a math standpoint. That's 9 conference games right there, and then you still have that 3 opportunity to play those games that you were talking about. I think that that's probably if they did get to 20, what they would do because it would allow you to still have those rivalries, right? Because when you think Texas Tech, you think about playing TCU, you think about playing Oklahoma State, you think about playing Baylor, right? Like you think about those things in the current landscape of the Big 12, but it also allows you to have a chance to go play every 3 years. Oregon has, if they join Arizona State, Colorado, whatever it may be. So I think if it gets to 20, that's what it will look like because the numbers just simply add up. Is it the most ideal situation? I mean, probably not, but from a logistics standpoint and like appeasing the masses, I think that that's probably the most likely scenario. But again, I think 16 is where they end up.
RC, let me tell you something. As a head coach, if they split up those 5 conferences and put me with TCU, Oklahoma State, and Baylor every year, and then these jokers in the other conference are playing Cincinnati, Arizona, no, I'm having a problem with that, and that's where I think the issue is going to come because that's crap. You play Arizona every year and they ain't good. They're putting their focus in basketball. You beating them by 20, and I got to play the best teams in the conference, and I got to like it's that's that for me as I'm thinking more so from a coach. That's the part.
Sure.
It doesn't help TCU. That doesn't, as a loyal member of that conference that's been there since day one, that does not help me. And at the end of the day,
But don't you want the geographical aspect of it? Like, you want the geographical aspect of the rivalries, right? That's
no,
what makes it fun.
I wanna win. And what happens is when you get a school like, no lie, but like you get Oregon and they got Colorado, which would be good, but Colorado, Arizona State, and another school, and they're
And
6-0,
BYU.
and
Yeah.
BYU,
Yeah.
and they're 6-0, and then I got to play the juggernauts of the conference, and then on top of that, on the third year, they added Oregon and Colorado. So not only do I have the hardest schedule in college football because of my demographic, so that's the problem I have. Like, don't add.
Maybe not college football, but in the conference, yeah.
But I'm
I'd
saying
agree with that.
don't add Oregon and don't add Colorado on top of my schedule that you have. That's harder than when the Big 12 with OU and Texas was in that thing. So I just think they gotta be we want people in our conference to be successful. And I just think like you gotta be careful with how you set that up, because I just feel like sometimes with the SEC, they do the same thing. Like everyone beats everyone. And granted, they always still get to go to the college playoffs somehow, minus the teams that's undefeated. But I just think you have to be, like I felt like they added the championship game back to the Big 12. So to add that extra, you know what I'm saying, to get there, same with the Pac 12. So I just think you got to set it up right, because eventually, man, what's going to happen is these teams that were successful, they're going to beat each other, knock each other out, and we're going to be sending other schools that may not be our best teams. And then we go to the college playoffs and get waxed, and they're not our best representative of our conference.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I think the most likely scenario for this year, though, truthfully, is they add Arizona, they
Yeah,
stay at 14,
agree.
and then they figure the rest out in terms of if Oregon and Washington want to join, come on in. We'll welcome you with open arms, kind of deal, because they're national brands, right? Um, but after that, I think they may wait a little bit to see kind of what's going on in the ACC. Does Florida State cause enough of a stir? And it's like, hey, we're bouncing. We're going to go to the Big 12. And I'll tell you this right now. If Florida State wants to come to the Big 12, you kick somebody out of the conference to get them in.
That's what I'm saying, man. I know you can't, I know time is money, but like I said, I would feel sick if, Miami wanted to come and Florida State wanted to come, and we
Well,
got.
you add them I think even if you're at 20, you say, screw it. We're going to 22. We're adding Florida State and Miami.
But that's what I don't know, man. I feel like those are the schools that bring more value to
Sure.
the Big 12 conference. Like, yes, they're good in basketball. They're not the greatest at basketball. Well, I mean, Miami had a fantastic year, but I just think like that helps the Big 12. Like you get the players from there that are coming. I just think the other way, and I know what they're trying to do, but I just think the other way doesn't suit
Sure.
the football side. That's all. And I know you can't make everybody happy. I know that firsthand. Being an athletic director, but still, I think it helps. It helps a lot. And like I said, it for me to get to play Miami, that would have been sweet. Florida State in Miami, in Florida State.
That's a big if, though, right? Like, we don't
That's
know
true.
what's going to happen there. And so I
That's
think you have to get the schools you can get
that's
and
true.
figure the rest out later.
Can you kick them out of conferences for real? Can you kick people out?
No, I was just joking.
Oh, okay. I was about to say.
I mean, I guess you could theoretically if they did something bad enough, like a breach of contract or something,
Oh yeah. I mean,
I
you
mean,
can't just kick them out because you
listen,
don't want them,
you
huh?
should not hear my advice on
Get them out of
legalese,
there.
though. Just because I'm watching Suits right now on Netflix does not make me a lawyer, even though I
True.
really want to. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. I'm gonna check it out.
in the end, Lyle, I think we've answered this question. I want people to answer it down in the comments below. The Big 12 will end up with blank schools in the conference. Your answer. I'm not talking about next year. I'm talking about when it's all quote unquote said and done, whenever that is. It may never be, right? But what is your guess in terms of, hey, this is how many schools will be in the Big 12 conference?
Oh, you
Don't
asking
answer.
me or the people?
I'm asking you.
Oh, I thought you were asking the people. So I was
No,
waiting to see. Okay,
I
yeah,
want to hear
okay.
from them too, but I want to hear from you.
When it's all said and done, I think we'll have 20.
I think I agree with you, But again, I will die on the mountain. I think the Sweet 16 would be the sweet spot. But I'll also say this. College athletics changes so much that having 16 could leave you so far behind that you have to go to 20, right? And so I think it's just an arms race at this point.
Bro, I agree. Like I said, I just think SEC, what they do, and I think kind of the Big 12s and that shit, I think they're all, I think they all talk, and I think like they kind of, have an agreement, kind of not to, I don't want to say outdo each other because we're still in people's schools and stuff like that.
But they don't give a damn.
I think overall, like the amount of schools they kind of talk about, because it affects, each conference affects each other. You know what I'm saying? If one conference is super good and this one ain't. So I think they're kind of staying within that. Don't get me wrong. If they want a school and they're taking it, that's a different story. But I think, when you're talking about trying to brand it or trying to grow it, you kind of got to be on that same page of those conferences, especially, we don't know behind the scenes. They could be talking like, hey, let's become these power conferences, and this is the end result, and so I think that they got to be on the same page, because if not, a conference will end up like, the Pac-12, the ACC, 100%. And it's because I just think that, they're not kind of following those steps. Like I guess maybe the Pac-12 has tried to get some people to go to to come to their conference, but
Lyle, I haven't talked about this early enough. This is a disservice to the listeners. I apologize. The PR side of me, Lyle, has to speak up on this.
Speak up, please, brother.
The Pac-12. Mm-hmm. I don't know who is in charge of your PR. I don't. But stop it. Stop. You're not doing a good job. And I'm not trying to be hypercritical or anything, but you put out a statement yesterday from the commissioner, which I'll say this. Let me preface this. I should backtrack a little bit. I know the commissioner made you put this out. You were doing your job, but also like, don't put it out. Anyway, he keeps saying, we'll be fine. We're going to have a TV deal, yada, yada, yada. Bro, you said the same shit for 2 years and you've gotten nowhere. Your conference is taking on water faster than an in-ground swimming pool in a hurricane. Stop. Like you can't do anything right now. And again, maybe you find some way to find that needle in the haystack to keep some of these big brands that you have. But if we're looking at it from a realistic standpoint, there is a 0.00001% chance that Oregon, Washington, Arizona stay in that conference. And those are 3 of your biggest brands. You're going to rely on your brand being Utah? Utah? It's just not going to work for you, dude. And just be better. I mean, I just don't understand how they continuously put out the same press release and change 2 words trying to feed bullshit to their fans. Like, it's almost at this point where it's like, bro, just sometimes the best thing, and they teach you this in PR, Lyle, sometimes the best thing to say is nothing. And that's where the Pac-12 should do right now. Just say nothing. It's okay. It's okay to say nothing. But they continuously just spew nonsense and lose teams, I guess, because they felt blindsided by this. I thought this was one of those things where I thought a lot of people knew that Colorado was thinking about it, but I guess not on their side of town. Hey, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. Wow. Tell the people where they can find you on Twitter.
You can find me at Coach LLEONG, and you can find the man that makes this run
at RCMB323. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on. We'll be doing more Pac-12. Well, we'll be spewing nonsense about the Pac-12 just like they are, but we'll be doing more Big 12 videos all year long, talking about them on Friday. I'll be doing a video on the channel every Friday talking about the best bets of the week for the Big 12.
And so he's good. He's good, people.
Well, I didn't call Kansas State to win the conference or anything last year. Oh, I did. Humble brag. Humble brag. He's Lyle. I'm RC. Appreciate y'all tuning in. If you want to stay in the know, not only on Texas Tech athletics all year long, but the Big 12, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.